I'm very scared about all these trendy concepts out there that are spending so much money on these expensive fit outs rather than just getting a good rent deal and being really smart about how your numbers stack up in this business model. What if your market is actually a global market and not just the 5Ks around the block?
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Geronimo Unfiltered podcast. I'm Dozy, your host, and today what I'm going to be talking to you about is probably the question I keep getting asked all the time from clients and CEOs of networks and people that are expanding their concept into their own franchise, etc., is what would I do? So let's get into it. Now, just quick story. Back in the day when I had the first studio, the big studio, we weren't doing that fucking well. I went into the office of my accountant at the time. His name was Jace. I said, Jace, I think about starting an Uber, mate. We're not making enough money out of the gym. And he leans in and he goes, if you've got enough time to drive an Uber, you've got enough time to grow your fucking gym. And I wasn't ready for that from my accountant of all people. I love him for that. But I want you guys to hear that story and think to yourself, like, where have you kind of felt that as well? Where have you kind of felt like you're probably not maxing out what you really could be doing for this studio? Dave Goggins in his book Can't Hurt Me talks about the 40% rule, where just when you think you are fully tapped and you can't go anymore, what if you're only at 40%? And I reckon when we kind of tap into a lot of the tactics that I'm going to go through right now, the kind of common theme across all of this is, what if you were capable of more? What if you were capable of doing that? What if you were capable of completely changing the game in this industry? So I want to talk about 5 major things that I would do if I started a studio today. In this economy, looking at the trends that it's happening, looking at the players that's entering the market right now, and looking at how people view this industry. And pay attention, because I reckon after this episode, you can implement any one of these instantly. So the first thing is around content. Now, I know you're listening to this on a podcast, which is probably part of the clue that I'm about to sort of tap into right now, but there's this phenomenon coming out of Google called the 7-11-4 rule. I'm going to explain that right now. Turns out the way we purchase things, particularly emotive purchases like, a membership at a studio, whether it's Pilates, fitness, yoga, whatever it is, that is somewhat an emotive purchase. In fact, in our sales training, we say people buy with emotions and then we post-rationalize later on. Turns out it used to be this thing called the first moment of truth and then the second moment of truth. The first moment of truth was the first time someone would see or would be exposed to your brand or your product. That was the first moment of truth. Then the second moment of truth is when they experienced your product. So Google analyzed billions of points of data, and it turns out that's changed. There's something called the 0 moments of truth now, and that's the name of their study, the 0 moments of truth study. And what it basically states is we need 7 hours of content across 11 different touch points on 4 different channels before we form a buying decision. That's what is called now the 7-11-4 rule. And we're seeing that in action right now. In 2024, if I look at the top of our academy, the people that are doing really well from a marketing and sales acquisition perspective, they are doing things that they probably don't even realize that they're doing that fits in with this 7-11-4 rule. So that is that they are doing content. Content creation isn't just kind of, hey, if you happen to get a video at the 5 o'clock class this morning, can you just send it over to me? It's not that anymore. It is actually a content forward approach to your entire operations. So that's the first thing I do is I would stack the team with content creators. I would also think about having a long form piece of content. Like you guys are listening to me here on podcast. We've got a YouTube channel, and we've also got a newsletter, so via email. So we've got the audio, we've got the visual, and we've got the reading format of long form. I would strongly consider, that's what I would do. That's what I would do if I started right now. I would invest in long form piece of content, knowing that, it is a really good way to chew up and manufacture that 7 hours of content that people need in order to trust you before they make a decision, a buying decision. Because that's what they're doing. There's something called dark social now, right? So they might see an ad, they won't convert off that ad, but then they'll sort of swipe out of that app and they'll go and Google search you. So they'll look you up on Google. Some of you guys don't even have a Google profile. There's no reviews on your profile. Or they'll look you up on Instagram, and your Instagram's got nothing to do with what you've been talking to me about on your ad. So there's incongruence. So automatically there's a trust factor that is eroding right now. So with content creation and a content forward approach to making sure that we're always talking to our certain avatar, I would know exactly who my fucking avatars are, my 3 avatars, and I would putting out content that solves their problems so they can get results in advance. And then I would be bringing them back to my long form pieces of content where I could nurture them and really kind of chew up that sort of 7 hours worth across 11 different touch points. And my 4 channels would be email, Instagram, YouTube/podcast, and Grassroots. Still to this day, I don't see enough grassroots from studios. Grassroots activities. And I don't mean like just putting a flyer in the cafe. I mean getting out in the community and doing community events. Like partnering with all the local service providers that sort of offer complimentary services, going in there into schools and doing like free workshops. Like we would be going into local workplaces when we would kind of had that corporate push, and we were doing corporate lunch and learns in the local area. We partnered with the Sydney University for one of the largest student wellness programs for their international students that lived in the dorms around the universities. Like we were creating this aura around our business, and I still don't see enough of that today. So I would do that. So the first thing is I would have content creators. And the second thing would be I would have long form pieces of content. And then that was a bonus is I would do a lot more grassroots activity. The second thing I would do is I'd make sure that before I hire people in my team, I would be making sure that they were able to be trained and were interested in being trained on being a converter. Still to this day, there's not enough people in these studios, Pilates, yoga, it doesn't matter, who are trained converters. So sales training, I would be hiring people from a sales background that are interested in fitness and are looking for a bit of a career change. So at least they've got some pedigree there, and it wouldn't be completely new to them that I've asked them to roll someone over at the 9 o'clock class. Because I'll tell you what, if we can get to the kind of maximum levels as quickly as possible, then what happens is you enjoy maximum profits for a longer period of time. I just want to get there sooner, rather than just drag it out across the month. And it just becomes a bit hard. It's almost like a slow death sometimes for the studios that I see. But it's not because they weren't great people and they weren't kind of brilliant in their own right and they didn't want to help people. They didn't understand the importance of having converters in their team. So yeah, that's how I would stack the team for content and for conversions and people who are going to be good at building relationships. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, I don't give a fuck what your concept is. You are in the relationship business. You just happen to run 45-minute sessions with your members. I'm very scared about all these trendy concepts out there that are spending so much money on these expensive fit outs rather than just getting a fucking good rent deal and being really smart about how your numbers stack up in this business model. For right now, I'd be thinking about regional. I love meeting regional owners because they charge them the same amount of money. They often have a more of a captive market because there isn't another concept just like yours across the road. But the sexiest part about that is their rent's only about $75,000 or $60,000. Like that is sexy. You can keep your polished cement archways and your sexy flower pots at the front of your studio. For me, 70 grand rent and the same top line as everyone else, that's fucking sexy. So that's what I'd be doing. I almost couldn't give a hoot about what the concept was necessarily. Just there's a bit on that later. I'd be more about what is the kind of real estate that this thing would need. What can I find in certain cities or in certain regional like hotspots that can get me a good rent deal at that amount? Because once you've signed off your rent deal, you can't change that. And it's only going one way, which is up. And so that is, you can bust ass as much as you want on the leads and sales, and you can try and, get cheap trainers if you want to, which is the hard way of doing things. It's really hard to outrun a bad rent deal. And so that's one of the big things that I would do if I entered back in the market in 2024. The third thing as well is around building a vertical brand. I mentioned in an episode a little while ago about the stats in terms of fundamentally the mechanics of workplaces have completely changed. Like a lot of big businesses have just moved out of the city. They've condensed floors. They've sold off real estate. People are working from home. Call it hybrid, call it whatever you will. And I think the studios that are struggling right now is they haven't really adopted to that fast enough where possible. So from the start, back to the original point about long form content, content creation, the 7-11-4 rule is I would be thinking about building a brand that exists way beyond the 5 kilometer or 5 mile radius of a normal, typical bricks and mortar boutique studio that we all, started in. What if your market is actually a global market and not just the 5Ks around the block? Even if I didn't have the answer to that just yet, I would just have that in mind. So I would start right now by building a vertical brand. What I mean by vertical brand is a brand that can go up and do hybrid training. So I've got my bricks and mortar, X amount of 100 members to fit into there, but then I've got hybrid training or like a hybrid offering, which means that there's an online component to it that then increases what's called the total addressable market, the TAM of my little studio. And then because I am building a brand and I am building an ethos around our concept, I can actually have an online shop front to sell things, whether it be merch or whether it be journals or products or anything like that. The creator economy, just point number one in this point here, by almost thinking about yourself as a creator, thinking about yourself as a creative brand that has a business attached to it, which is effectively your training in your facility or online. The creator economy is tipped to become a $500 billion industry by 2027. $500 billion. These are all the blue ticks that are, people online that are selling, $27 things and lead magnets, right up to like brand deals that, influencers are having, and sort of everything in between. But the problem, I think, with a lot of the sort of influencers with a $27 PDF is that they don't really have a back-end business. They don't have a real business attached to that has some enterprise value just yet, because it's a personal brand, so to speak, and an email list effectively, or an audience. But in this market, we've got a traditional business, but we're attaching the sort of almost the creator economy elements to it to create the best of both worlds in a world where that is where the shift is happening. There is a school of thought at the moment that we're in the third wave of business right now. And this third wave is the wave of personal branding. It's around identity and really investing in your personal brand. You're going to hear a lot of people talk about this. Gary Vee, Hormoz is going to talk. I think Hormoz's new book is $100 million personal brands. I obviously have a personal brand coach. Shout out to Matt Purcell. And it's the reason why Ryan Reynolds is a billionaire. Ryan Reynolds is a billionaire not because of his movies, but Ryan Reynolds is a billionaire because of how he's attached his name to products, and then he's done some things to increase the worth of those products, and he's done that multiple times over. Do you guys know Mr. Beast? Mr. Beast, the guy on YouTube that, orders 10,000 Amazon parcels and let's see if it fits in his bedroom, or you buy a brand new Lamborghini and just drive it off a cliff for views, and obviously revenue behind that. Mr. Beast released a chocolate called the Feastables. It is now bigger than Hershey's as a market cap, I believe. The Logan Paul and Jake Paul, the kind of YouTube brothers, YouTube personalities that launched Prime. Prime, apparently, I heard, you can fact check me on this, is worth more than Gatorade now. That's power of personal brand. So, team, just to round this out, what I'm saying is content creators, I'd stack the team with content-focused approach because of the Google 7-11-4 Zero Moments of Truth, just how we're buying things at the moment, tied with the creator economy becoming a $500 billion industry in just a couple of years' time by 2027. I'd make sure that my numbers, I don't get carried away with all these trendy, new, sexy concepts and fit outs. What is sexy is a really fucking good rent deal, even if it's in a regional location, even better, because the market is generally starving for something like what I would launch. And the rent deal makes it so much easier to enjoy business, so you don't have to redline it from month one and every month from then on. And then I would have this kind of hybrid vertical training approach so that, for those remote workers and people who are, I've got 3 days in the office and I'm 2 days from home, great, you can still be part of us. Like that just takes that off the table, and it reduces any kind of friction around having to drop prices or suspend people for half the bloody month and do any kind of that fancy pricing. It just makes sure that I'm retaining as much revenue as possible on top of a really fucking good rent deal. The other thing I would do is I would think about structuring my memberships into 3 levels. So, 1 through to level 3. I would really get focused on who it is in the market that I'm trying to solve specifically. So it's not in everyone. We're really specialized in getting someone from here right up to here. And those 3 levels will extend lifetime value by up to 5 times. That's money. Sometimes people, I really see great people have these great concepts. The business model itself is limited. So what happens is, the saying is that the size of your market determines how much you could earn. Your business model will dictate how hard you have to work for it. So when I have a look at some of these business models and I see great owners, they're just fucking doing everything they can, but they're only going to get so much out of the model that they've got. Like 300 members paying X amount. If that's all you're offering, then you do have a cap to how much you can earn, and you're just going to have to keep redlining that every single month. Versus studios that we work with that have 3 different levels of membership and they can hold on to people for 5 years. Some of their lifetime values is $15,000, compared to someone that's just got 300 members and 1 level of membership. Lifetime value there might be about $3,000 or $3,500. So the magnitude is up to 5 times for the same amount of work effectively, but your model extends the overall profit that you're going to generate out of every single member. And that means that when I build it that way, I'm going to be able to outspend everyone else in my market. And that's a true commercial competitive advantage. Tell you what's not a competitive advantage, you saying that you've got a great community, because everyone fucking does. So for instance, I would come up with, as part of our core concept, I would come up with our own proprietary framework to say that there's 3 levels for this type of person, and I would pick a niche, right? For this type of person, there's 3 levels that they will need to progress from absolute beginner, just coming off the couch, right through to I'm about to compete at the games. And then I would structure, training programs. I would structure the thing that they're going to start to work on. So instead of just going unlimited training sessions, that's kind of a bit useless at the moment. I would go, okay, for this level right here, what's important for you? These are the problems that you're having. What's important for you right now is to work on these 3 things. So here's your program for that. And this is how we're going to check in with you. But in a group environment, it's almost like how we run Geronimo. And then when you sorted that out, then we get into this second level. And in this second level, this is what's going to be important for you. This is probably what you're feeling right now. So the antidote to that is these 3 things. And that's this is how your experience changes. And then the top level, whatever it is the ultimate pinnacle of where you want to work towards. Now, the trend at the moment is around longevity. It's not shredding. So longevity for me is, how do you put a price on that? And a lot of things that come through with longevity include, certain medications, getting certain tests done, thinking about supplements and how long it takes for that to kind of take place. So then it's like your next blood test, and it's about building routines. And it's also being around other people who are, the biohackers or people that are also interested in longevity. I think SoulCycle might be the first brand in the world to come out with a longevity membership in the US. I might be getting this wrong, but I think it's in the order of thousands of dollars a month. There's a gym down here in Melbourne that really, we talk about expensive fit outs. This thing is luxe. Like, it's a 7-star hotel. And you'd think that is suicide. Who the fuck would go there? Anyway, it's full. It's high-end memberships of people who are looking for longevity and to live to 400. And it's all about, serums and baths and, it's not sled pushes and stuff like that. And they're sold out. They're looking for a second location because I know the guy that's kind of helping them with the equipment, and it is a beast. So I would be thinking about having 3 different levels of the ultimate outcome and become a category of one. I'm the only one in the industry that's offering this type of service and this type of promise, rather than just another concept with ski ergs and assault bikes and talking about how many calories you burn, because that is just not where the data is showing us the industry is moving towards. Now, it doesn't mean it's not going to work. Obviously, it's going to work, but to what degree and what is the shelf life of that? So that's what I'd be doing. The other thing I'd be working on is mindfulness. Mindfulness and sort of mental health. The stats are indisputable. The World Health Organization predicts that by the year 2030, I think, mental health issues will account for 20 or 30% of all diseases. Mindbody did a study. You guys heard this when I did a interview with the CrossFit boys. 48% of members are in your studio right now because of mental health, not because of physical fitness. When I speak to studio owners, they tell me from the ground, they're telling me it's actually high. They feel like it's higher than that. So that's probably underreported. Out of the UK, there's a study on The Guardian that shows that 3 out of 4 people, so 75% of people go to the gym for mental health. So it's somewhere between 48% and 75%. All you just need to know is it's probably the majority right now. So what I'd be doing is I would be making sure that is hardwired into our concept. It is hardwired into our ethos. It is hardwired into how I hire people, how I train people, how I set the values for my organization and sort of set the values for my team. It's in the content that I put out there. What it's not is just having a portable ice bath out the front with some bags of ice from the service station on a Saturday. It's better than nothing, but if you're looking at the trends, it is a massive swing in that direction. So I want to be part of that solution, not someone who's just kind of accommodating it, so to speak. So there's another study, my wife's a psychologist, and there's another big study that's come out, and it's a good TED talk, that the number one predictor for longevity is connection. That's why when we see people go into nursing homes, like my stepdad did, honestly, it was tough to see. It really was the start of the end. He needed full-time care, but when he went into that nursing home, it was so shocking to see how quickly, before our very eyes, he deteriorated. Not just in his kind of overall physical health, because that probably looked okay, but just that zest, that spark for life went. So connection, that's ultimately what people are looking for when they think about mental health, feeling better about themselves, feeling that connection in a world of hybrid and Zoom calls and, since from COVID and cost of living and all this kind of stuff. You think about all of this, and ultimately what we want to come back to is like a primitive feeling of we're social beings and we often long for connection with people. So I will be focusing on how we bring that to life in our studios. We have a concept that we've played around with that we may or may not release eventually, but it'll be around kind of doing the opposite of what people would typically expect from a gym. And just like you see the timetable of when, strength sessions are on and when your Pilates sessions are on and whatnot, but I would have guided meditation in there. I would have like catch-ups. I would have walk and talks. I would have online wellness coaching available. Again, that's another hybrid approach. It's a high margin offering that could exist and could be available to everyone all around the world, just time zone dependent. And you could even match that to getting people that from different time zones. You can be getting people from different nationalities. You could have a really simple cost structure there where you're paying that kind of wellness coach per session. So, you're making that kind of 3 times return on that. And I will just have a holistic wellness approach to everything. So it's not just shredding and just being trendy and cool. It would just be about actually tapping into the broader approach to where we see this industry going. And it is longevity. It is mindfulness. It is physical health. It is mental. And it is also hybrid working. It's this 7-11 4 principle, in a trust recession at the moment, a 40-year low. It's how we find know, like, and trust, and then ultimately purchase from a brand. And then the last piece I would have is, what we're really specializing in right now, working with a lot of HQ networks that are starting to roll out. They've got the kind of 4 or 5 studios, and now they really want to roll out to 104, 105, 205. And it's working with them to develop and design a profitable opening package, because I'll just give you some stats to kind of round this out, and then we'll sort of wrap up the episode. 50% of businesses just won't make it. 20% won't make it past the first year. 75% of business owners last year earns less than the adult minimum wage despite working more than full-time hours. And only 43% of small businesses were profitable last year. You've only got one chance to open well. I've got to tell you guys, right now, the odds are stacked against you. You can't just wing it. I would be making sure that I would stack the odds in my favor to make sure that I focus on a profitable open, a really profitable open. And when I say profitable, I mean by about 10%, because 10% is the new margin. So we know for a fact that there are networks out there that are telling their new franchisees, expect a 20 to 30% churn in your first month. Fucking don't listen. Do not do that. Dude, that is not great advice. Instead, I'd be thinking about how to make sure that you do 2 things. So this is what I would be doing instead. I would be running our profitable open package to get us open at a profit, and then switch into the next 3 months into what we call the best start package, which is just to crank and switch into the new sort of signature offers and just keep growing, so that within the first 3 months we are full from a bricks and mortar. We're making a certain percentage margin. Now he's going to fill the sort of vertical, like the hybrid side of things, which is obviously infinite, by making sure that we go through all the 5 phases of a proper opening, and then into the 3 or 4 phases, and making sure that we hit what we call the 3 green lights within the first 3 months, which is lead flow, sales conversion, and rollovers. Typically, you don't have a churn problem in the first 3 months, as long as you did the pre-3 months well, and you were actually selling people that were going to stay, not people that just wanted to try it out and bounce just so it made your numbers look better to show HQ. So just to round it out, and just a bit of a sort of recap, I said 5 key points, but I've sort of extended a couple here because I really wanted to make sure that this was really tactical for you guys. So the first thing is how I would stack the team with content creators, relationship builders, and converters. That's who I'm hiring, not just people who are available with a Cert 3. To sort of follow on from that point, I'd be making sure that I built a vertical brand from the outset, a hybrid training approach into it as well. So you've got the real life training and you've got some virtual stuff, whether it be training or whether it be access to some coaches and coaching. But the point there is it's like, because it's online, it's an online offering. It can extend to everyone outside of, my local area. I would be making sure that I wouldn't get carried away with trendy, expensive, sexy fit outs. What is sexy is a really good fucking rent deal. Whether that means I go into regional, even though I live in the city, I would make that sacrifice, and being really smart about that. I would be structuring my membership levels, not from a price perspective, but from an offering perspective at 3 different levels to extend my LTV, my lifetime value of every member. So the opportunity here, if I get that right, is my LTV of a member can be $15,000 as opposed to the typical $2,500, $3,000. Remembering the size of your market will dictate how much you could earn. Your business model will dictate how hard you have to work for it. I would be thinking about, in terms of my concept from the outset, I would be thinking about future of where the trend is going, and it's in favor of this kind of mindfulness, mental health, longevity. And I'd be baking that into my concept and my offering from the start, and those 3 levels. And then to round it all out and to get really tactical, I would be making sure that I'm opening at a profit surplus of 10%, because 10% is the new break even. And then I would switch gears into 3 months of intense hitting my 3 green lights. So my lead flow is coming in with my content creators and my ads people, and I'm hitting my sales conversion percentage off those leads, and I'm hitting my 80% rollover. like in those first 3 months. So I think that covers everything. That covers like some business model stuff. It covers some trends stuff. It covers some really tactical, how I'd build the team type stuff. We could do better than that now. And that's what I'm seeing come through, which is really exciting. That was a lot. Gets me excited, as you can tell. I talk fast. But, you know, I really want you to think about which one of those things could you, I guess, execute right now. If you're in a network, there's probably some elements to that you might not be able to do, but I'll tell you what you can do is you can hire a team of content creators. You can bring some content creators in. You can turn your team into converters. You can add that as a criteria for the next round of people that you bring into your team. So you're not just looking for an available trainer. A lot of you have been reaching out to me on Instagram, which I absolutely love. I genuinely love it. So reach out to me at hey.dozer on Instagram. It's actually me responding. And if it's not me, because I'm in meetings or I'm flying around the country, then my team lets me know that there is someone there that is looking for some help and some advice and some stuff. And then it's actually me audioing back and forth. That's why I absolutely love it. I love helping you guys. So do that. If you thought this episode was helpful, if you thought this episode was, worthwhile, send it across to someone else in your, WhatsApp group or another owner that you think might be able to hear this. There's probably some stuff that you guys have already been talking about, like how you incorporate mindfulness and stuff. So hopefully there's some good ideas for you there as well. Anyway, with that, there's plenty of epic episodes that are on the way, lots of special guests that we've been interviewing, and we are changing studios. So you're going to see us from a brand new studio as a bit of a present to ourselves for hitting the 1 year mark, our birthday, which we're really pumped about. So anyway, love you guys. I hope that was helpful, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye.